Back when the Giants and Dodgers played in New York. My co-host is Peter V.Trunk. How are you this evening? I'm Ralph Tyko, by the way.
I'm fine, Ralph. How are you?
All right. We got off. You know, technically, I'm not the best at this.
That's okay.
I have to say my assistant, Meshuggah Boychik, doesn't do very well when it comes to pushing buttons. So we're back on the air. We have a great guest. We're going to talk about the early 50s Yankees, Giants, or Yankees-Dodgers rivalry. The Giants were a force, 51. They won it. But mainly it was the Yankees and the Dodgers. And no better person, an old Yankee fan from way back, and returnee to the zone, Alan Blumkin. How are you? Cold in New York, that's how you are.
Cold in New York, but I'm happy to be on.
Welcome, Alan.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was telling Peter off the air that how happy I am that we can learn from you. That's the whole idea, is that we pass on stuff to people and we have people pass things on to us. And I like to get perspectives, different perspectives, and I'd like you, Peter, as a Dodger fan, to talk to Alan as a Yankee fan about the years, specifically around 52 to 53. Alan, I know you consider that to be a very, very pivotal year in the Yankee dynasty when they won from 49 to 53. So let's start with you, our guest, Alan Blumkin.
Well, I grew up in the area of Queens County, New York, called Belrose. And nobody my age was born there. Everybody was either an immigrant from the Bronx or an immigrant from Brooklyn. So when I was a kid, all the boys who followed baseball were either Yankee fans or Dodger fans. And we called anybody who rooted for the Giants as being chicken. So and we used to bet quarters on the World Series. I mean, this was a day when a quarter was a lot of money back then, and it was really a rivalry between the boys in my classes who followed this as closely, and the way I was brought up, the way I got to start to following it all was through the baseball cards, because my parents had no interest in it. So I started buying the cards in 1951. Of course, I don't have any of them anymore because my mother threw them all out, but that's why I really developed an interest, and the first time I really followed was the end of 1951, which, of course, in this city was between the Yankees and the race between the Giants and the Dodgers was incredible. And
right. Now, you're an outsider looking into Peter and I's rivalry, Dodgers and Giants. What did you think of that Giant-Dodger playoff series as a Yankee fan?
First of all, I think that the rivalry, and Peter will probably confirm this, escalated to a new point when DeRocher made the switch from the Dodgers to the Giants. And I also thought, and I've stated this on Facebook, anytime I'm in a Boys with Summer group on Facebook, even though I didn't root for the Dodgers, and I thought that Charlie Dressen was a terrible manager, a terrible handler of pitchers, and that the Dodgers won the National League in 1952 and 53 despite him, not because of him. And I thought he mismanaged the team. He burned out all his relief pitchers. And when he brought in Branco, who was a starting pitcher, who gave up a home run to Bobby Thompson in the first playoff game, it was a recipe for disaster. Also, Campanella didn't play in those last two games because Dressen thought the foul territory in the Polo Grounds was too much for Campanella to handle.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I thought Campanella was banged up. I thought Campanella had been banged up
in one of the last games of the regular season.
Very
played the game in Ebbets Field, but he did not play the two games in the Polo Grounds.
Huh. That's interesting. I know that there was talk that had they brought Campanella in, that he could have gotten Branca through it.
Yeah, possibly. And another thing that everybody overlooks in that playoff was that Ferrillo was 0 for 14, and he had a terrible year in 1952, way back at 247, and he had tons of grit removed from his eyes in that off season. And in 53, he won the batting title. So, it's my belief that the eye problems started to set in sometime toward the end of 51, and that's why he couldn't hit the ball at all. And Dressen had him leading off in that series for the Dodgers, and as I said before, he went 0 for 14. And Dressen just had he was stubborn, and he never had any success after the Dodgers let him go. He never had any success managing anywhere after that.
Right.
I thought this. In retrospect, the best move that O'Malley ever made there was not giving Dressen a 3-year contract after 1953 and letting him walk away.
Right. I think his wife wrote a letter or something
that
we demand this and we
ruin Joe Black.
Okay. Now, I want to play the opposite. I want you, Peter V., to give me your analysis of those Yankee teams of the same era, just as Alan talked about the Dodgers.
Okay. First, I'd like to say I didn't want to butt in while Alan was talking. I found it very, very interesting. If Dressen had brought in Campanella to catch the 8th and 9th inning, Newcomb would have stayed in the game because Campanella had a relationship with Newcomb where he could go out to the mound and kick his butt and tell him how great he was and how invincible he was, and he could psych him up. They never would have gone to the bullpen. Campanella would have kept Newcomb in the ball game. That's number one. Now I'll switch to the Yankees. In 1950, the Dodgers had a very good team. The Yankees, of course, had a very good team. In 1953, it was probably the best Brooklyn Dodger team in history.
That's what I was thinking. Yep.
Almost every fan would agree with that. Did they win the World Series? No, they did not. The Yankees beat them. The thing that was the Achilles heel for the Dodgers that the Yankees had, the Dodgers had the home run hitters. They had the guys in the field. They had the hustlers and the smart ball players, but they didn't have the depth in the pitching that the Yankees had. The Yankees had Reynolds and Rashi and Lopat. These guys, forget about it. They were just too much for the Dodgers, just too much. And they not only started, but they came in relief. And it's not like today where they came in for one inning. They would come in for 4 innings and shut the Dodgers right down. And that's the way it is in a short series. You know, you don't get too many chances in a short series. Best 4 out of 7, anybody could win it. But those Yankee teams were loaded. I mean, they were deep. The benches on those Yankee teams, they were loaded, I'm telling you. And the old stories, all the old jokes go that, Casey Stengel was not a great manager. Anybody could have won with those guys. And he was a push-button guy and this and that. You and I could have managed the Yankees to those championships. That's how dominating they were. I'm not sure if I buy into that 100%, but I know my family talked about it over and over. I might buy into it maybe 50%. I know when Casey came to the Mets, he didn't spin any miracles for those Mets. So he an entirely
different cast of characters. The Gene Woodling he had with the Mets had no comparison to the Gene Woodling, as an example. He had Hodges, those guys, and Ashburn. No, that you can't really. And he was, by that time, very much over it. He was a public relation guy. He was the right man for the right thing. But back in the 50s, wow, could you imagine going from DiMaggio right in the middle of a 5-year?
Please.
Yes, please.
Okay, if you look at the 5 pennant races from 49 to 53, the only one that was easy was 53 when they won by 8.5 games. The others were 1 game, 3 games, 5 games, and 2 games. And the reason I mentioned that 1952 was a pivotal year is because the Yankees started September, and I've done research on this. They started September 2 games ahead of Cleveland. Both teams went 19-5 in the month of September. And they only played each other once, and the Yankees won that game. And the Yankees went into the World Series and won the last 2 games at World Series in Ebbets Field.
Yes.
Okay, which was very, very hard to do. And
almost impossible.
That gave him 4 straight, and so Stengel, in his later years, especially when he got to the end of his tenure with the Yankees, he might have fallen off due to his age, but during those first 5 years, he got them through. He knew who to play, when to pinch hit, when to relieve pitches, and he was, in my mind, the best manager during that period that I have ever seen.
Well, the period right before that,
nobody,
the period right before,
or never was.
The period right before Casey, there was a guy named Joe McCarthy, and you might want to check out his record.
Very overrated.
His record was eye-popping in
very
itself.
overrated. Okay, because
McCarthy, I don't know how you can be overrated when you're that
very
good.
simple, because McCarthy did not win the pennant by he won every pennant was like 8 or 9 games or more. The 5 times that McCarthy was involved in races that were 3 games or less, he lost all of them. With the 1930 Cubs, the 1940 Yankees, the 1935 Yankees, and the 1948 and 49 Red Sox. I've had this argument with quite a number of people, and every time they tell me how great Joe McCarthy is, I quote this stuff.
Okay.
And that's open for debate. I'm not saying I'm right or you're anybody else.
No, not at all. Not at all. I appreciate all of your comments.
No, that's what this is all talk. It's just it's opinions, and we're all opinionated. The 3 of us.
Yeah.
We all have opinions without being opinionated.
Yeah.
Which is something. I'm most fascinated by the transition between when DeRocher went from the Dodgers to the Giants. You're a few years older than us. What was that like for you as a fan looking at that? You're a Yankee fan.
In retrospect, DeRocher and Rickey, Rickey was, when he came to the Dodgers, was always bailing DeRocher out of trouble.
Right.
And then when O'Malley started contesting Rickey for the ownership, O'Malley had his hands into the church people, so they started putting out publicity about DeRocher, with his infidelities with Lorraine Day, with his attachments to George Raft, with his attachments to the various gangsters. And when DeRocher was suspended in 1947, DeRocher felt that Rickey didn't back him up, so it was a parting of the ways in 48. And the breaking point was the Dodgers had no catches in the first couple of months of 48, and DeRocher wanted to take Roy Campanella with him north, and Branch Rickey wanted to use Campanella to break the color line in the American Association. So Rickey sent the Campy to St. Paul. The Dodgers had a catcher named Bruce Edwards who caught most of their games in 1947, who had a bad arm, and they switched Gil Hodges to first base. So the differences became more and more. When Stoneham decided to fire Mel Ott, he asked Branch Rickey if he could talk to Bart Schotten, who had managed the Dodgers in 47. And Rickey said, Schotten, he says, you can have DeRocher if you want him. And the rest was history. And there were a number of Dodgers, like Carl Ferrell, who couldn't stand DeRocher. And just the fact that DeRocher went on the other side And I don't think Jackie Robinson liked him very much because he criticized Robinson when Robinson came in to spring training overweight in 1948. There's a lot of bad blood between the teams. With DeRocher and Dressen, who considered himself better than DeRocher, which was ridiculous. It just got hotter and hotter and hotter. And in those days, those are the only games that would take 2.5, 3 hours. Was the games, regular season games between the Dodgers and the Giants. Now, I read in Sporting News in 1952 of owners complaining about games taking 2.5 hours, which in retrospect is hysterical.
They should be around to see the way it is today. Yeah,
and but those games used to take forever. Those Dodger Giant games. You had Magley, who was on they all hated on the Giants, and then when he came over to the Dodgers in 1956, was welcomed as a hero.
That was, for a kid who grew up a Giant fan, Magley playing for the Dodgers was quite a shock. How could this be? I have other words, but in deference to young ears out there, I won't use them. It was just as bad, almost as bad, really, as them leaving, because first of all, they ask a kid to develop hero worship.
Yeah.
And everybody had Willie Mays. It was easy to be a Willie Mays fan. Hard to be a pitching fan, to have a hero who was a pitcher. And I read a book called The Biography of Sal Magley. I did a book report on him.
Yeah.
And I learned this guy was a rebel. He went off to the Mexican League when he wasn't paid enough back in those years. And this guy, he was from upstate New York. He was one tough guy. And he was my hero, and I could only watch him once every 4 days, but still. And then, boom, he's gone. The Barbers,
he was 32
Dodgers.
years old when he broke into the rotation in 1950. That's kind of old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And without Magley, there was no 51. There was no 54. So for him to be in a Dodger uniform in 1956, being picked up by Roy Campanella and being carried off, I have a picture of that. I think Jake Pitler was in that picture
at the end of that season,
Right. It was just mind-blowing.
If you think that was mind-blowing, imagine if Jackie Robinson went to the Giants in December of 56 and played in the Polo Grounds for the Giants in 1957.
Wow.
Imagine that.
Yes, that I can't really.
Somebody on Facebook.
Then again, I can't imagine in 1958 they'd be playing in San Francisco and the Dodgers would be in L.A.
Nope.
Could not have imagined that. And looking back, it still seems absolutely like this couldn't have happened. That you couldn't write fiction to make it turn out this crappy for all concerned.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Pardon me?
A nice theory I have is that, the Giants, the first year they were in San Francisco, had a tremendous rookie class.
Right. Davenport,
Philippe Alou, and Leon Wagner, and Jim Davenport.
Yeah. All guys developed in New York.
And I'm of one of my crazy theories is that they held them down in the minors in 1957 so they could be lousy and get out of New York. And they were supposed to go originally. They were supposed to move to Minneapolis, the Giants, because the stadium that the Twins wound up in their early years was built for the Giants. And then when O'Malley decided to take the Dodgers out to Los Angeles, he got Horace Stone to keep him company out in San Francisco. And, of course, the fathers out there took Stone him out to Candlestick Point when it wasn't windy, and said, "This is your new ballpark." And they had that monstrosity there for 40 years.
Right. And I think there was a mountain that that was preventing the wind from going in, and when they built the stadium, they cut that. Maybe you could tell me, Alan, what happened with that?
It's a very windy area. It's right on the right on
on 101, right down by the water in San Francisco.
By the water,
yeah.
And the time it's windiest is after 1 o'clock in the afternoon Pacific time. And a friend of mine and I went out there in 1973. We were in there watching the A's play a couple of games. We just went out there to see what it was like. And they were cleaning it up after an exhibition football game, and you could see the papers and all the junk just flying all over the place there. And of course, the Stu Miller being blown off the mound in the All-Star game there. It was a miserable place to watch a ball game, but I still think that the Giants would have moved to Minneapolis in 1958 otherwise, and I think the only assets that they left New York with in that last season were Willie Mays and Johnny Antonelli.
From that
entire team when they moved out to San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah, my favorite Giant that era in the early 50s, my favorite Giant was Alvin Dark. Because I thought
Alvin Dark, God rest his soul, just passed away recently.
Never got the recognition that he deserved for the way he played baseball.
Yeah, I think if Rizzuto and Reese are in the Hall of Fame, then Dark should be in the Hall of Fame.
That's
not that. Right.
Unfortunately, it's not that happening.
Not that I really think that either of them were Hall of Fame players. I have to say.
No, neither did I. I was in a debate on Facebook about Yogi Berra and Johnny Bench, and it went on for a few days, and I realized that 90% of these people who were debating this in favor of Bench never saw Berra play. They weren't old enough.
Right. Well, neither of us ever saw Tyko play, but
no.
We could still debate about whether he was better than. No, he wasn't better than Ruth. Ruth was Ruth.
Nobody was better than Ruth. Yeah.
Right. When you consider just his pitching, if you want that to tip the scales, let alone the home runs, and he hit 1 or 2, but was a 20-game winner before he became a hitter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He was a great left-handed pitcher in his Boston days.
Yeah, and basically saved the game after the Black Sox scandal.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I've got to give. But then again, McGuire and Sosa might have saved the game after the strike in '95. So I don't know. I don't know who to thank. And what they saved the game for.
And their reputation.
That's another question.
Yeah.
Peter, your turn. Talk a little bit. My turn to talk a little bit? Well, I'm sure you guys are both well-versed on how the Dodgers did not win the pennant in 1950 when they lost to the Phillies on the final day of the season when the third base coach, Milt Stock, with no one out and runner at second base, Snyder singles to center field, and he sends the runner home, and he was out by 20 feet. We all know that story, and then Sisler hits the home run in the 10th inning, and the Dodgers lose that pennant. And then, of course, they have the 13.5-game lead the next year in 51, and they lose to the Giants, who are getting the signals from a buzzer and a signal from the center field clubhouse to steal that. Now, that pennant, if the Dodgers had won in 47, which they did, in 49, which they did, if they had won in 50 and 51, which they very well could have, and then again in 52 and 53 and 55 and 56, they would have a different legacy than they have now. Although their legacy isn't too shabby, they would have even a greater legacy if they had won in 50 and 51. And I feel they should have won both of those years. But that's the way baseball goes, a bounce here and a bounce there and a foul ball there and a fair ball there. And that's the way the game is played.
Let me just ask you this, Peter. You mentioned that the Giants were stealing signs. I believe they were. I mean, there's a book, Cathedral Green, Wall Street Journal writer comes in, gets all the facts, interviews Thompson, interviews Branca. I mean, he knew which players accepted signs, which players really didn't want to hear them. There were some players that just thought that they didn't want to be fooled or this, that, and the other thing. Didn't want to know what was coming. Most players wanted to know what was coming. My point is, DeRocher had an elaborate system of sign stealing. It wasn't legal. It wasn't illegal in those days, so you're not going to go back and change any records or put any asterisks in it. But what do you suppose the odds were that he didn't have something in 1947 and 1949 going on when he managed the Dodgers along the same lines?
It was 1949. That was shot.
Oh, 1947 then.
Yeah. No, he was there either. He was suspended that season. Stratton was the manager of both of those years.
Well, give me a year when he led them to success.
1941.
All right. Do you suppose he was stealing signs? Do you suppose he was doing anything
Possibly,
that the Leo DeRocher just didn't get, that we knew to be, didn't just become developed in 51?
In 1942,
whoa.
In 1942,
yeah, maybe I'll steal a sign.
In 1942, they blew a 10-game lead to the Cardinals, and who won 106 games that season, and Dodgers won 104. DeRocher, I wouldn't put anything past him. Let's just put it that way.
Didn't the Dodgers lose a playoff game in 1946 also?
Yes, they lost 2 straight games to the Cardinals.
So imagine if Brooklyn wins in 41, 42, 46, 47, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 55, 56.
Yeah.
We'd be talking like they were the greatest team ever, except,
So what we say, Rashi's not there. Let's see, Johnny Sain had a sore arm. What if? Yeah, of course, what if?
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
We dream. I would have liked to see, with it all, Willie in his prime playing in New York. I mean, we got to see great years, but he really came into it, that second part of his career in San Francisco. And it was a shame we didn't get to see him, and we had to go to Philadelphia to see teams, to see other National League teams come in, and that was a big pain in the ass. And we didn't have our home team, and it was a shame we didn't get to see the 59 Dodgers, let alone the 58 Giants develop in New York. It really was. And Peter and I are both Met fans. Alan, do you follow the Mets at all? Do you care?
Yeah, well, I root for the Pirates in the National League, but now with the scheduling the way it is, the Pirates and the Mets only play each other 6 times a season. So I root for the Mets when they're not playing the Pirates because
well, that's pretty much how I am when the Giants Giants not playing the Mets.
Now is so it's not 22 times 7 anymore. It's I could go into a whole dissertation, which I won't bore you with, about what the craziness of the scheduling these days.
Oh, that's for another show.
Alan, let me ask you a question. Yes. I know the answer. Ralph and I, the best baseball player we ever saw. We didn't see Babe Ruth. We didn't see Tyko, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The best baseball player we ever saw was Willie Mays. We both agree on that. Who is the best player you ever saw?
Well, to me, it's a choice between him and Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle was great at his peak. He had some years, especially toward the end, that were not very good. He was hurt a lot. But I loved watching him, and more than my favorite of the Yankee of those years was Yogi Berra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, easy to be a favorite of.
He passed away last year, but he was. A lot of people remember him for all the Yogiisms, and very few people remember him for the great ball player that he was when he played. In the game one of the 1953 World Series, the Dodgers had first and second, and the fifth inning or sixth inning was tied 5-up at the time, and Dressen tried to sacrifice runners to third base twice, and Berra threw them both out of third base. And that broke their backs. Why with a lineup like that, he wanted to sacrifice bunts. Wanted to sacrifice bunts was beyond my comprehension. Still is.
Really?
When I saw that, and I saw the way Berra handled pitchers, and the way the sweet swing he had, I still get chills when I have the VHS tapes of all the old World Series. I still get chills watching that.
Oh, he'd hit anything. He'd swing at anything. He would club the ball. It was sweet in the fact that he'd come over a high fastball.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Club it.
I said to Jeter a couple of years ago when Jeter was swinging at bad balls, he said, I swing at. Jeter said, you used to swing at them. Barry said, yeah, but I used to hit them.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yogi was very, very misjudged and a warm, sensitive guy, and portrayed in an autobiography, or a biography rather, by a guy named Barra, Barra, as being very hurt when the Mets and the Yankees, for both of those teams, messed with his head when they fired him. And it really got to him.
When Joe DiMaggio passed, Barra became the leading living Yankee icon that Steinbrenner had to go crawling on his hands and knees in the museum, and get Yogi to come back to Yankee Stadium. And once that date was announced, I got tickets. I was up there for that, and that was the day that David Cone pitched his perfect game, so I was there for that. That was incredible. That was absolutely incredible. But one of the big things that the Yankees had during the 52 and 53 was a second baseman by the name of Billy Martin, another person whose playing career was totally obscured by his managerial career. And Martin somehow would manage to turn it up 50 notches in the World Series, because generally he was a 250, 260 hitter during the regular season. In the World Series, he became Superman, and he outplayed Jackie Robinson in all four of the series that they played against each other.
Right, he made that catch when the ball was lost. And
I remember watching that on black and white TV, and then he got the hit in 53. He got 12 hits in the series and drove in the winning run in Game 6 in the bottom of the ninth with his 12th hit.
Do you guys remember the Don Larson? I'm sure you do, but did you see it on TV, Peter? You too?
Yeah, you know what? I got a chance to watch that again about 3 or 4 years ago in its entirety, not the highlights, every single pitch with the announcing and the commercials and everything else. And I want to tell you, I forget what at-bat it was. It might have been his second or third at-bat, I'm not sure. Snyder hit 2 balls in the same at-bat in the upper deck, the third deck, that went foul. The first one maybe 5 feet, the second one maybe 4 feet. He drilled 2 line drives up into the third deck. Like I said, I can't remember which at-bat it was, but I never knew that anyone hit the ball that hard against Larson that day. Now, I know all the stories go that Hodges hit one that Mantle ran down in left center field. I saw that one. Anybody could have caught that ball. But Snyder drilled 2 balls up in the triple deck in right field that were just foul. Absolutely amazing that I never realized that until 4 years ago when I saw a replay.
Very interesting. Yeah. You were speaking of Yogi. I still remember Yogi jumping into his arms at the end, and I remember sitting watching that. It was probably after school, just watching the last inning or so, and sitting with my mom, who was one of my best memories because she told me that day that in 1939, when Lou Gehrig gave that speech, she was 19 and got tickets and came in from Mount Kisco, and she was there that day. So I'm going, Mom, look what we watched. She says, wait, let me tell you what I watched back then.
Right.
Wow, pretty cool. I was 10, so
yeah.
Yeah.
You know who the losing pitcher was, of course. You all know who the losing pitcher in Larson's perfect game.
Sal Magli.
Sal Magli. He pitched the 5-hitter.
Magli and
pitched the
Larson.
5-hitter. He lost 2-0.
Yeah, Magli and Larson were the only players ever to be teammates with Willie, Vicky, and the Duke. Larson pitched a handful of games in 1964 with the Giants. And that was the year Duke Steyer played with the Giants, and it was Willie Mays.
Well, I think Bill Crandall might have played.
They're the only two players to be teammates of Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and Duke Snyder. Throw that one.
Great, did you know?
You see the kind of response you get.
That's a great
the day after Larson's perfect game, the Dodgers behind Clem Levine beat the Yankees 1-0 in the bottom of the 10th inning with a line drive over Enos Slaughter's head by Jackie Robinson. In the final game, the next day, the Dodgers lost 9-0. So in the last 28 innings, the last 28 innings, the Dodgers scored 1 run in that World Series.
And the 2 games before the Larson game, both Whitey Ford and Yankee pitcher named Tom Sturvin pitched complete game wins against the Dodgers. So the Yankees had 5 straight complete games in that series.
Yeah.
Which is something I don't think you're going to see too many.
Yankee pitching was very underrated. Yankee pitching was extremely underrated.
Reynolds and Lopat left the scene. It was Whitey Ford and a whole bunch of pitchers that would have 1 or 2 years before they blew their arms out.
Right, Grimm and Cooks and those guys, and Dietmar,
Turley and Terry and Stafford, they had a whole slew of these guys.
Absolutely.
Years, they blew their arms out, and those days, of course, they had no rotator or Tommy John, so these guys would basically be done.
Right.
Patchwork pitching staffs at outside Whitey Ford that were put together by Stengel and Company after Rashi Reynolds and Lopat had run their course in New York. And
speak to coaching.
They used Reynolds an awful lot in relief.
Yes, they did.
Rashi in relief in Game 7 started Lopat in Game 7 in 1952. Brought Rashi in relief. Rashi could never pitch in relief. They brought in Reynolds, and then they had a lefty named Bob Kazava, who had gotten the last.
Bob Kazava, right?
In the 1951 series in Yankee Stadium, they brought Kazava because Kazava used to get Duke Steyer out in the International League. Left Kazava in, and after they pop up that Martin caught, Kazava wound up pitching 2 1/3 innings, giving up 1 hit. He was hit in the 8th or 9th inning in that game.
In the 55,
okay, ladies and gentlemen, gonna have to wrap it up. This has been terrific. I want to just give kudos to me, the producer, who puts together a show with these two mavens, and I'm good at that. You guys are terrific, and I'm thrilled to do this with you, Peter, on a regular basis. It's just absolutely fun, and that's the name of the game. And Alan,
my pleasure.
See you, and nice talking to you. And Ralph.
Good. We'll continue to come back. This is the second time. Hope you'll come back again.
Anytime you need me, I'm available.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Alan, it was great. It was great listening to you, Alan. My pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. It was fun for me, and we'll see you next time, everybody. Keep it going. And adios, amigos and amigas. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you.